New Jersey, for some reason, has a penchant for establishment Democrats. Emma brought this up when we were off air, and I feel like it's true. Luckily, Epic Senior is here, and he can tell us if it's true or not true. If there was one guy who was a dynamic progressive, though, it was Frank Lautenberg. So anyway, Lautenberg, we miss you. So no, you do have Cory Booker from New Jersey. Then you've got Menendez, such as he is. No, I mean Cory Booker isn't very establishment.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
2020, Booker Kane. Oh, God. Okay. The other state that I would argue outmatches New Jersey in its love of establishment Democrats is Virginia.
Yep.
Virginia loves establishment Democrats. Mark Warner, Tim Kaine, Terry McAuliffe. I mean, it's the who's who of establishment Democrats. Michael, one, do you accept that hypothesis? Two, is there any reason on earth for it, or is it random?
I mean, I don't. There's so many of these hypotheses that I don't accept. I have a problem even.
Wrong. We move forward. Back to Emma. No.
With the term establishment Democrats. I mean, New Jersey has been a reliably Democratic state now. Outside of Trenton for quite a while. Bill Bradley, at his time, was a real progressive, and he was a senator from New Jersey. Good point. The Republicans that they send to Trenton, and the let's take Chris Christie aside, but you look at people like Christy Todd Whitman, you look at a Democrat like Jim McGreevey in Trenton. There's a type of sort of light Republican, and in some cases light Democrat that they're going to send. So I think that they haven't led the league in progressives. They don't come from everywhere, but there are certainly some progressives who come out of New Jersey. I think, and I think you'll find with Phil Murphy, that as he is governor for a longer time, he's going to emerge as one of the more progressive governors in the Democratic Party. So I think that you're going to. I mean, that's my prediction.
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, he was a Goldman Sachs executive.
Right, but so
I know
that's
disqualifying.
I have a roommate who has worked at Goldman Sachs and still works at Goldman Sachs, who is among the most progressive people I know. Who was a huge Sanders person. He's a progressive, and he loves Goldman Sachs, and it's made him a nice living, but he's also a progressive. But Phil Murphy, who he is, and the politics that he wants to put into New Jersey, and I think move nationally, are going to, I think, take a lot of the great elements of the progressive movement, the recent progressive movement, and combine them with Democratic politics. So I don't think that you can label a state. I think you're right about Virginia. But Virginia is not, it's hard to compare Virginia to New Jersey also. They're two totally different electorates. And the reason that so many of the Terry McAuliffe types are because Northern Virginia is where politicos live, and that's a big part of the voting bloc in Virginia. And then you have that 5th congressional district that goes from Danville in the south, which is really conservative, all the way up through NASCAR country to Charlottesville, which is really liberal. And so you have this kind of mix of that state that's cut in half. It's a very difficult place to define the kind of Democrat that comes.
But Jersey also has some of the wealthiest counties in the entire country.
That's right.
And that's what people forget. I mean, they think about Jersey Shore, but there's a mix of working class Americans. I'm from New Jersey. Yeah. And there's a mix of very, very wealthy people, so Peter Jacob was running in a very wealthy district and lost. I think it's interesting when you look at the map of where Lisa McCormick won versus Bob Menendez, because it was all along the Pennsylvania border and to the south. And then Menendez won all of the districts, if you can see the blue ones, that are closer to New York City. So that's more, I don't really know what that means, but they're
wealthier.
Right, but every single progressive candidate lost. The more progressive candidates that were running today.
But I don't think you can use the Menendez race as a test.
No, it's
because,
an outlier.
He's for all his foibles, he's been a popular New Jersey senator, congressman, and he's popular with so many of the Puerto Ricans and Cubans in Patterson, in Newark, in Elizabeth, and those are big numbers there. So.
And let's bear in mind, Andy Kim did win. It was unopposed, but did win PCCC backed.
Yeah.
So it's a bad night when you're mentioning the unopposed candidates.
I know, but in every case where there was someone unopposed, theoretically there could have been challengers. Sometimes there are not for good reason.
I'm just saying, it always sounds funny.
I understand
that Phil Murphy had two major, more progressive challengers than him in the primary. He was the most conservative out of the three frontrunners.
He was maybe the least progressive is better than saying the most conservative, because he was. But I think that as a governor, he is going to be among the more progressive governors, and I think that says something going forward.
I think it's just an interesting trend that the more establishment Democrats tend to win, or the less progressive candidates tend to win in these races. I just think
they also tend to win. I mean, that's the thing, and that's what you're up against.
But that's just the dynamic in Jersey.
They tend to win, period. Right, but it's the dynamic in America for the most part. And it goes to what Cenk was saying earlier, that when you start something like this, it is 2018. If you're having the same conversation in 2026, you're saying, well, wait, what's going on here? But right now, is it surprising? It's not at all surprising. I mean, I said this to Cenk when he launched Justice Democrats at the very beginning of Justice Democrats. It takes a while. So I don't think that you can judge anything about the state because of what happened tonight. And I don't think it makes Jersey an outlier either in terms of that.
So I have a lot to say about what you two just said. But first, it must be noted, California polls have closed. And and so you know what I sensed as soon as it hit 8:01? Like my body eased up a little bit. It's kind of a funny thing. It got awkward in here. Okay.
In general or specific?
You're right. You're right.
Yeah. Well, much better than before.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So because I realized in that moment, that I'd been tense, have I done enough? Have I done enough? Have I done enough in my head the whole time? And at 8:01, there was nothing else left to do.
Yeah.
So
we're watching now.
Now we just watch. We see California results. Sometimes they're notoriously slow, but obviously they'll come in and for different races at different times. And we still haven't hit the mother lode in California yet. We're going to discuss that and analyze that as well. But before we take our next break, I do want to comment on a bunch of things that Michael and Emma said, because there were such good points in there. First of all, I asked Michael to explain the phenomenon in New Jersey and Virginia, and I have to say, I think he did it brilliantly. When you give the context of the centrist Republicans that came out of New Jersey, and I'll add Tom Kaine to that list.
For sure.
Yeah, who was, by the way, I grew up being a Tom Kaine supporter when I was a kid, and he was considered a liberal Republican, and he was, and back when that actually was a real thing. And so, and Emma made a great point about how wealthy New Jersey is. And so what does it produce? It produces centrist Republicans and centrist Democrats, who are both relatively socially liberal, but skewed towards economically conservative because the state's really wealthy overall. It's got pockets of significant poverty in places like Camden, Trenton, and Newark, but overall, and I know that's the butt of a lot of jokes, but you drive around New Jersey and you'll be shocked at how beautiful it is and how some places are literally palatial. And so that is why they have a lot of centrists that come out of there. That is a great explanation of New Jersey. And in Virginia, it's another great explanation. It's in Northern Virginia, you have a lot of literal establishment Democrats, right? They live there. That's their home base. So, and it's that also creates a milieu, if you will, a way of a little bit of a groupthink, a culture in some way that produces candidates like Terry McAuliffe. My opinion is that Terry McAuliffe couldn't win anywhere else. He is way too establishment, and everybody can see through it from a mile away.
He also knows everybody in Virginia. So, I mean, that's the other advantage he had from doing what he did for such a long time. Every Democrat in Virginia knows Terry McAuliffe, and that was a big advantage he had. One other point that I want to make in predictive analysis is if money does come out of politics, and I think it will one day, but when it does, I think New Jersey is going to be among the most progressive states in the country, because I think that they're the type of state that would be welcoming to that, because they wouldn't have to kowtow to the bedroom communities of New York City, the moneyed people, the Wall Street, the real estate, whoever it is that lives there, and I don't excoriate any of them, but the ones who put money into politics and cause politicians to have to kowtow to them. I think when it's erased, the progressive tendencies that are shown in just what you were talking about and the moderation of these candidates, I think is going to make New Jersey sort of the #1 place to switch to becoming a very, very progressive state.
So now let me,
so.
yeah, I hope so too. And let me stick up for my home state. They are one of the 5 states that already passed the call for a convention to get money out of politics. So, and I actually interviewed Walker Green, who was the state leader in New Jersey, just last week. He's running in Maryland now for a Democratic seat. It's actually in the Democratic Committee, Central Committee in Maryland. So I love that now, after he got a pass in New Jersey, he's now running as a candidate there. But yes, and that's every state that Wolfpack has passed in, wolf-pack.com, by the way, if you want to get involved, has a wonderful story behind it. And in New Jersey, the great story there was the Koch brothers sent their lobbyists to try to defeat us. And there were, I forget if it was dozens or hundreds, but the room was absolutely packed with young people in a committee hearing. And I remember one of the state reps was like, what is this? We've never seen anything like this before, where this room is jam-packed in a committee hearing with the public. That never happens. And most of you are young. That never, ever happens. So the Koch lobbyists had no chance. They got up and spoke, and they were obliterated. And then we passed, and obviously the House and the Senate of New Jersey and put it up as one of the states.